Mr. Farage, when will the euro break apart?
If I knew the answer to that, I would go down to the bookmakers and place a very large bet and be a very rich man. I don't know when it's going to break apart. I suspect that between now and Christmas something big will break. I mean, if you remember, back in May, this crisis was at its height. Over the course of the summer it appeared to be a calmer, quieter period, and of course in Brussels everybody's in denial. You know, I mean, huge debates about the EU happen and no one mentions the euro. Well, apart from me, of course. I always do. But if you look at the economic figures coming out of Ireland this week, if you look at what's been happening to the bond markets in Portugal and again in Greece, you'll realise that there are some huge problems here. And if people in Germany think that the euro crisis is just about Greece, well, I'm afraid I've got some bad news for you, because you ain't seen nothing yet. Portugal and Ireland's economies are possibly even in a worse state than Greece's. I think something may happen before Christmas, but when will it finally break to pieces? I can't say, but inevitably it will. It was just a huge cataclysmic error to force into a monetary union Germany and Greece and Portugal. It simply can't work.
So what is your solution for this? Germany out of the euro?
Well, there are two solutions. One is that Greece is forced out, and Portugal probably and Ireland too, and they have to re-establish their own national currencies, and they'll probably need some help to do that as well. That's one solution. I mean, clearly Greece needs massive devaluation, otherwise she simply can't cope at all. The other more radical solution, and it may appear to be off the agenda completely at the moment, but the radical solution, of course, is that Germany says, look, we've actually proved since 1945 that we're rather good at managing our own currency. We're rather good at managing our own democracy. You know, I mean, the Deutschmark was a currency that was globally respected. You know, the Germans' reputation for fiscal responsibility and sound money was something that we were all very jealous of. And the radical thing would be for Germany to say, we are taking back the Deutschmark, we're taking back control of our lives. We don't do this in a spirit of being against anybody. You know, we want to trade with our European neighbours, we want to cooperate with them, we want to run our own lives and have our own currency. That's the radical step, and that's the one that I personally would like to see.
But do you think that Brussels will like this? I mean, we have a big, huge democracy deficit there.
Well, of course. I mean, look, the fundamental problem in democratic terms with the European Union has been since day one that it is the European Commission, the bureaucracy, the civil service, if you like, they're the ones that have the sole right to initiate legislation. They're the ones that have the sole ability to amend and change legislation. So, you know, you'll read in the newspapers that the European Parliament did this and the European Parliament did that. But in effect, what the European Parliament does, it does the bidding of the civil service. In a democracy, it should be the other way round. It should be parliaments that make laws and civil servants that enact laws. In Brussels, it's the other way round. Now, the bigger democratic question is, can the deficit be closed? Is there a means, is there a way of democratising the European Union? And my answer to that is that right from the very word go, this was never intended to be democratic.
So it's intended to be undemocratic
Absolutely.
then?
From
a kind of junta then? A junta?
From the start. I mean, Jean Monnet was the father of this. Jean Monnet really was the father of this project. He hated democracy. It was terribly inconvenient, because if a government gets elected and it goes in this direction for 4 years, then you get another government that goes off in a different direction. Now, people like Monnet, with their great global views and with their unshakable belief that they know what is best, they know how we should live our lives, they don't want a system like that. They've got 10, 20, 50-year plans, and democracy is highly inconvenient. If there was anything truly democratic about this European Union, then when they drafted a constitution, that was the opportunity to make it democratic, and I challenged them all the way through. Come on, show me that you're Democrats. Make this constitution a democratic framework for a European Union, and they steadfastly refused to do so.
But so far we are closer to the former socialist republic than to a democracy.
Well, a great friend of mine and a man that I admire enormously is a former Soviet dissident called Vladimir Bukovsky, who now lives in Cambridge. He's been in England for about 30 years, and Vladimir spent 12 years in and out of mental institutions in the former USSR, categorized as being mad because he was opposed to the system. Interesting, I'm often called mad as well. And Vladimir says that what he sees with the development of the European Union is something very unpleasant, and he has a sort of chilling phrase. He says, I have lived in your future, and I didn't like it.
Coming back to another issue concerning the EU is this climate hysteria. Where are the roots, where are the causes for this big lie?
Well, it's so convenient, isn't it? You know, that if politicians get a whiff that there is something happening where they can show the world what wonderful people they are, then they all club together and they all agree. And so it's been with climate change, global warming, call it what you will, that this was their way of showing everybody what wonderful people they were, firstly. Secondly, it gave their failing European Union, as they saw it, some sense of purpose. And anybody that was offering a sceptical voice was absolutely vilified and derided. I remember doing a programme about 5 years ago when this whole topic came up, and I said, well, hang on, you know, I may not be a scientist, but I think there is another argument going on here that you know, it is not definite that CO2 emissions are leading to increased temperatures. And I was on with a Labour politician, British Labour politician, and he sort of pointed at me and screamed, "Denier, denier," as if I'd committed something.
Like in the Middle Ages.
Yes, I mean, oh yeah, so yeah, witchcraft. You know, I mean, I should have been burned at the stake for doing it. Now it's interesting because I think people are beginning to wake up to this. Whether or not we are living through a period of global warming is open to question. But what I am certain of is the measures we are taking, supposedly to combat climate change, are leading to yet another reduction of our democracy, are burdening the poorest people in society with unnecessary bills, and in terms of energy requirements, I mean, we're heading down a road that is absolutely mad. I mean, I'm afraid Germany caught the disease before we did. I think there are 18,000 of these disgusting wind turbines all over Germany. Well, it's all well and good when the wind blows, but what happens in February? What happens in February when it's cold and we have fog and frost and we have a big anticyclone sitting over northern Europe? Not one of them turns. Not one of them produces any electricity at all. So I'm afraid that, you know, what we've done in the name of climate change, I think, frankly, is disastrous.
Finally, your personal view on the developments in Brussels. I mean, they're sticking to their power, and I don't see any new developments in terms of a democratic development.
Quite the reverse. Quite the reverse. The next development, and watch this space, because in October, Herman Van Rompuy, the President of Europe, the man who of course earns more than Obama but was never elected by anybody, in October his task force will report, and his task force is to set up a new economic governance of the European Union, and one of his plans is that if any member state breaks the rules that he sets, they will have their voting rights taken away from them. That's democracy in the EU. That's what's coming next.
But it remembers me more to a dictatorship.
Let the viewers make their own minds up. I believe that this project isn't undemocratic. I believe it is fundamentally anti-democratic.
But in a personal talk to me, you told me there is nevertheless some hope for the wider future.
Of course there is. Look, of course there is. You know, what our career politicians are doing in all our member countries for their own self-aggrandizement, for their own careers, for their own finances, what they have done is nothing less than to betray our nations, to betray our democracies, and to do it against the tide of public opinion. The gap between the governors and the governed is now a gaping chasm, and I'm an optimist. I believe that gap can be filled through peaceful and democratic means.
Nigel Farage, many thanks for this interview.
Thank you very much.